So important. Da 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 da. Lighting so important. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. As we continue our learning of getting ready for the holiday here, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. We're in chapter 128 in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We blow the shofar, which I'll do, beginning for the second day. We do it every day, Shachris. You don't have to do it at synagogue. You can just do it at home. And we do a Tekiah Shavarim through a Tekiah. Chutz me'erev Rosh Hashanah. We don't do it the day before Rosh Hashanah. In order to make a differentiation between the ones we're doing just because it's a way of getting into the Rosh Hashanah mindset, and the ones that they're chiyuv that we have to do. Why do we do it? It's the nature of the shofar. If a shofar sounded in the city, did people not tremble? Now, the shofar works on this subconscious level to arouse a person to what they need to do for Rosh Hashanah. Goes in, works on the subconscious, and that's the way it is. So if you don't want to prepare for Rosh Hashanah, and you want to maintain everything you're doing, do not listen to shofar. Okay. Additionally, we also have a custom, he says, in our countries. Rosh Hashanah Elul, we add another psalm. Mizmor David, Hashem Ori V'ishi, Psalm 27. David, Hashem is my light and my salvation. Alpia Midrash. Why do we say this particular psalm? It's connected to a Midrash in Vayikra Rabbah, which explains this pasuk. This psalm says like this: Hashem Uri, Hashem is my light, God is my light. On Rosh Hashanah, V'yishi b'Yom Kippur, and my salvation on Yom Kippur. Ki yispetneni besukkah. It says later he'll hide me in his shelter. It's a remez. It's a hint to Sukkot. Some people say additional Tehillim. Right, because each place has their own. Some people try to do the whole Sefer Tehillim in the month of Elul. This is a very important one. Whenever you write a note, I don't think it applies to text message, but it definitely applies, in my opinion, to an email. Although that's just my opinion. What I do is what he recommends is at the beginning or end of the letter. You should pray for your friends' well-being and bless them. That you merit in the approaching days. It should be inscribed and sealed in the book of life, right? Here people say, may you be inscribed and sealed in the book of life. And I always add, for a healthy and sweet year, you could be alive and have a really tough year. So I add that on there. Other people do too. Was mine. Anshe Maisim. So people of good deeds. This is a funny phrase, Anshe Maisim, because it really means Anshe Maise, people who do things. In other words, people who are attentive to what's going on Jewishly. Anshe Maise. But it's referring to people who are trying to do the right thing. He says you should look at your tefillin and mezuzahs. Now, we've said this before. A reminder: if you have gasos, if you have those big, heavy, hard tefillin, they do not need to be checked. But it is worthy to look over them to make sure that everything is good. In other words, do a 5-point check, on your tefillin. Check the straps. Check the boxes. If anything looks strange, show it to a rabbi or a sefer, get it fixed. Now, mezuzahs, twice every 7 years, one is supposed to get them checked. And I believe I am due. So I'm going to be doing my mezuzahs the next day or two, hopefully. And we'll get that done. Okay, number 4. From the Shabbos after Tisha B'Av, right? So that's going backwards in a few days. We have these 7 haftorahs of consolation, right? Because leading up, we have these 3 really, really intense haftorahs leading up to Tisha B'Av. Fire and brimstone. Jewish people, you got to change your ways. Then, after Tisha B'Av, from Shabbos Nachamu, it's 7 haftorahs of consolation. And so he's going to go a little bit in here about which haftorah to say and so forth. We're not going to go into this. We're going to skip it. But it has to do with when, Rosh Chodesh Elul falls out. And if it's on a Shabbos, so then there's a special Rosh Chodesh Maftir. So that's why he talks about it. Okay, number 5. On the Sunday preceding Rosh Hashanah. So, of course, this is Ashkenazi. If you are Sephardi, you already have been saying Slichos from the beginning of Rosh Chodesh. But for us who do not eat rice on Passover, right? I have to make my bad joke every year. But we all have to get up and do Slichos after Sunday between Rosh Hashanah. Mashkimim l'Slichos, we rise early, we start on the Sunday. So this year, since Rosh Hashanah 5783 is going to be on a Sunday night, we start the Sunday before. We begin the previous day. We have to have at least 3 days. So that you can do them at night, late at night, or you can do them in the morning. And he says, you say your brachas, you say your birkas Torah, and then you say slichos. Right? You don't put on your talis, you don't put on your tefillin, you first say slichos. The one who's leading the slichos, it does put on a talis, because you begin them with ashrei. Even if you're at home, so you're saying, there's no, let's say you say them at home, there's no shlich tzibur, you wouldn't put on. It's only the person who's leading them for the public would put on the talis. So what about if the person's doing this at night, right? You're doing a lot of, especially in Hasidic circles, they do them in the evening, like 10 o'clock at night and later. So you wouldn't say the bracha because you're putting on the talis at night. Anyway, there's a whole thing. We're going to skip forward. Okay, now because it's not shaykh to everybody. Okay, tov la'amod b'ritzich. You have to stand for slichos. One should not be seated. But let's say you've got an issue. It's hard for you to stand. Yamod l'chol ha'fachois. You should at least stand for where we say kel melech yoshev al kisei rachamim. And when it says Hashem, Hashem, El Rachum V'Chanun, that one. Vidui. Look later, he's going to discuss 2 chapters a little bit more on this subject. Okay. So number 7, Yakti Idaktik. You have to have a shliach tzibur that people want. You shouldn't have somebody stand up to do shlichas who people don't really care for. B'yamim noraim, during the days of awe. Ishu hagun agadol b'torah masim tovim. In fact, it's not just somebody people like. You try to put up somebody who's great in Torah knowledge and good deeds, and they have to be 30 years old or more. In other words, they have something to pray for. But of course, if you don't have that, it's not ma'akev, right? You still do slichos and you still do all the services. Like he gives another reason. She'az kfar nach resichas adam shel b'charusai. Because the passions of youth have abated, and his heart is more submissive to God. I've seen it. Another reason brought because they have more to pray for. But the idea being that a more mature person is going to be the person you want to represent. Right? Because he's got married and got children, ideally, right? Again, this is ideal. They don't have to have it. Right? So then they're saying all these prayers they have really what to daven for. Anybody who's married with children knows that they never davened. The difference between davening is big. Not to, God forbid, put down a person who doesn't have children, because they obviously have what to pray for too. That's why it's not a ma'akev thing. But it's not going to remove the opportunity to say this. The same idea goes for the person who's the Baal Tokeya, right? And the person who's leading all the davening, that they should be Yer Shemayim, right? But however, you have to, if you can't find somebody, any Jew, Kol Yisrael, Ksherin L'Kol, any Jew is right. You can't bring in like a guy from the symphony to play the shofar because he's really good if they're not Jewish, right? As long as the people are accepting of this person, right? So that there shouldn't be any quarrels. We don't want any fights to break out. Oh, this guy, we don't like him, so forth. Number 8. What about somebody who's a lo aleinu, somebody who's in mourning? Kol yud beis chodesh achar avivimo, right? The 12-month period after father and mother, lo yeshlich tzibur, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Ele im ein achar agan. If there's nobody else, they can do it. Otherwise, the mourner doesn't lead davening, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or blow shofar. Let's say they're in 30-day period to shleishim ad shar kroivim. Let's say they're in shleishim for other relatives, right? Who only have a 30-day mourning period. If they already had the position of being the Baal tefillah, right? The chazan, or the person who's a shofar, a Baal Tokeya blows shofar, right? That's already their position. But they're in mourning after another relative, not a parent. Mutter. He says it's okay. That person can do it. And the reason is why? We learn this when we learn the laws of mourning. Because the minute the festival begins, their shloshim is over. However, if they didn't hold the positions before, and there's somebody else who can do it, you should be stringent, right? Even though technically they're not in mourning anymore, right? During the days of Slichot, between Rosh Hashanah, even near Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, they can serve as a chazan, but a person who's actually in the 7 days of mourning should not. Now, Slichos, they get short shrift, and it's for a few reasons. First of all, nobody likes changing their schedule. That's one thing. But another is that, and again, this is my experience, is that we're unfamiliar with the texts of the Slichos. They're all in a very poetic Hebrew. They're not the more basic Hebrew that we're used to and that we say every day for other prayers. So what I advise people is to get a book of Slichos that's bilingual and to do the parts that we just mentioned, the Hashem, the 13 attributes, and do El Melech Hashem, the king who sits on his throne, to do those parts in Hebrew if you can, and the rest to do in English as a way to make, to get yourself into the Slichos spirit. Okay? Now, the question is, can you say these 13 if you're not in a minyan? This issue comes up. So now we're on number 9. This is going to be the last. We're going to wrap it up with, maybe we might get to 10 today. Let's say you got an individual saying Slichos, right? You're not in Shul. Generally, we say, you're not supposed to say these 13 attributes. It's only supposed to be done in a minyan. In a matter of prayer or petition. A quorum. But if you don't have a minyan, you can do them in the trope that they're read from the Torah. Benigun v'tamim. Okay. V'chein bocham shenizkar shlosh esrei midois kegoin zachor lanu hayom bri shlosh esrei. In places where the 13 attributes are mentioned in the Slichos, right? So they're said a few times. Okay, yesh lo ligadel. So you can omit those. In other words, the first time it says it, you say it. The other times, because it repeats itself a few times, those times you would leave it out. This is the advice he's giving. Also, the things which are in Aramaic, we're not going to say those. Maran Dishmaya, okay. We want to have a minyan. Now, Moshe Feinstein writes that he may chant the verse in a tune he would normally use when studying Torah. In other words, we're not supposed to say them in the manner of prayer if we don't have a minyan. There's a certain melody. Hashem, Hashem, Kel Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emes, Loiseh Chesed L'Alavim. That melody you're supposed to do with a minyan. But Rav Moshe, Shulchan Aruch say you can read these in kind of a chanting tone. You do not have to know the exact cantillation. And you're supposed to do the whole verse until the conclusion, right? Not end. When we do that chant, that song in Shul with a minyan, we end with vinakeh, right? But that's not actually the end of the pasuk. So we're supposed to go through the very end of that pasuk. And everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning in.